At 2:47 in the morning local time, roughly 14 nautical miles off the coast of Bandar Abbas, a fiberglass hull about 23 feet long sat low in the water. No crew, no pilot, just a motor, a camera, 220 pounds of military-grade explosives packed into the bow, and a satellite receiver listening for instructions from a command center somewhere on the Iranian coast. The boat was moving at 38 knots. That is faster than most police speedboats. The wake was almost invisible in the dark. The engine noise was lost in the sound of the waves. 6 miles to the north, the USS Arleigh Burke, a $2.2 billion guided missile destroyer, was running a patrol route, 505 feet long, crew of 300, 96 vertical missile launchers, Aegis radar that can track a baseball at 100 miles, the most sophisticated surface warship the United States Navy has ever built. The destroyer never saw it coming. The drone boat hit the Burke's hull just below the waterline on the port side. The explosion ripped a 12-foot hole through the steel plating. Seawater flooded 2 compartments in under 90 seconds. The ship did not sink, but it came close. 11 sailors injured. The Burke was towed to Bahrain for emergency repairs that took 9 months and cost $147 million. The drone boat that did it cost roughly $800 to build. $800. That is a cost ratio of over 180,000 to 1 in favor of the weapon that hit the ship. And here's the part that almost nobody in the American media is willing to say out loud. The United States Navy does not currently have a reliable defense against these boats. Not in the Strait of Hormuz, not in the Persian Gulf, not in any shallow water choke point where the drone boats can operate from shore bases, and the American destroyers cannot run away. By the end of this video, you will fully understand exactly how a weapon that costs less than a used Honda Civic just made the most expensive surface navy ever built almost irrelevant in the world's most important waterway. You will understand what these boats actually are, how they work, why the Navy cannot stop them, and why the Pentagon has known about this problem for over a decade and done almost nothing to fix it. Let us start with what an Iranian drone boat actually is, because most people hear the phrase and picture something from a science fiction movie, a sleek, unmanned vessel packed with computers and artificial intelligence. That picture is completely wrong. An Iranian drone boat is a commercial fiberglass speedboat hull, the kind you can buy at any marine supply yard from Dubai to Miami for about $300 to $500. Bolted to that hull is a 150 to 250 horsepower outboard motor, which costs another $4,000 to $8,000 depending on the model. Mounted in the bow is a warhead, anywhere from 100 kilograms to 500 kilograms of high explosive, the same stuff used in artillery shells and naval mines. The control system is what makes it a drone, a camera, a GPS receiver, a satellite transceiver for command signals, and a simple autopilot chip that costs roughly $200 on the civilian market. The entire package, start to finish, costs between $800 and $15,000 depending on the size of the motor and the weight of the warhead. Compare that to the weapons designed to stop it. A single SM-2 surface-to-air missile, the kind fired from an American destroyer to shoot down incoming threats, costs $2.4 million per round. A RAM missile, which is a shorter-range defensive weapon, costs $900,000. A single 5-inch artillery shell fired from the destroyer's deck gun costs $3,500. Iran can build 400 drone boats for the price of one American interceptor missile. The math is not close. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The drone boats are not new. Iran has been building them since at least 2010. The Pentagon has been tracking them since 2012. The first public warning came from Admiral Jonathan Greenert, then the Chief of Naval Operations, in a congressional hearing in 2014. He said, and this is a direct quote, "We are concerned about swarm attacks from small unmanned surface vessels in confined waters." That was 12 years ago. Since then, Iran has built an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 of these boats. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates them out of at least 11 known coastal bases scattered along the northern shore of the Persian Gulf. Each base can launch between 50 and 200 boats depending on the size of the facility. And the United States Navy still does not have a proven counter. Think about what that means. The Pentagon saw this threat coming over a decade ago. The technology is not complicated. The boats are not stealthy. The tactics are not secret. Iran has been testing them in exercises for years, publishing videos, making announcements, and the Navy, which has an annual budget of roughly $220 billion, has not fielded a reliable defense. Why? The answer is surprisingly simple. American naval doctrine was not written for this kind of fight. The Navy spent 50 years preparing to fight the Soviet Union in the deep Atlantic. Big ships hunting big ships, carrier strike groups versus submarine fleets, Aegis radar tracking ballistic missiles launched from 1,000 miles away. Nobody planned for a swarm of 80 fiberglass speedboats coming out of a coastal inlet at 40 knots in water too shallow for a destroyer to maneuver. The problem is not the technology. The problem is the geometry. Let me explain what I mean. An Aegis-equipped destroyer can track hundreds of targets simultaneously. The radar works, the missiles work, but the missiles were designed to intercept aircraft and cruise missiles flying at altitude. When you fire a $2.4 million SM-2 at a boat sitting 3 feet above the waterline, the missile's radar has trouble locking on. The boat is too small. The radar reflection is too weak. The sea clutter, the radar noise bouncing off the waves, drowns out the signal. Even when the missile does lock, the engagement geometry is wrong. The SM-2 was designed to dive on a target from above. A drone boat is already at sea level. The missile has to adjust its flight path in the last few seconds of flight, which reduces accuracy and gives the boat time to maneuver. The 5-inch deck gun has the opposite problem. It can hit a small boat at close range, but the gun can only engage one target at a time. The rate of fire is roughly 20 rounds per minute. If 50 drone boats are coming at you, you can hit one boat every 3 seconds. That means 47 of them get through. The close-in weapon system, the Phalanx CIWS, is the destroyer's last line of defense. It is a radar-guided rotary cannon that fires 4,500 rounds per minute. It works against missiles. It works against aircraft. Against a swarm of boats, it has the same problem as the deck gun. It can only engage one target at a time. One gun, 50 boats. You do the math. Now, here is the part that should terrify anyone who understands naval warfare. The Iranians know all of this. They have studied American destroyer tactics for decades. They know the radar limitations. They know the missile engagement zones. They know the gun ranges, and they have built a tactic specifically designed to exploit every single weakness. The tactic is called a swarm attack. Here is how it works. Stage 1. Launch. Between 50 and 200 drone boats leave multiple coastal bases simultaneously. The launches are coordinated by radio from a central command post, but each boat operates independently once it is in the water. This means you cannot shut down the swarm by jamming a single control frequency. Stage 2. Approach. The boats move toward the target area at high speed, roughly 35 to 45 knots depending on sea state. They do not move in a straight line. They zigzag. They circle. They create crossing paths that make it harder for defensive radar to predict which boat is targeting which ship. Stage 3. The kill zone. At roughly 2 to 3 nautical miles from the target, the boats accelerate to maximum speed and converge from multiple directions simultaneously. Some come from the bow, some from the stern, some from the sides. The defender has to choose which boats to engage first, and every second spent shooting at one boat is a second that 5 other boats get closer. Stage 4. Impact. The boats that make it through the defensive fire hit the ship's hull at 40 knots. The kinetic energy alone, a 2-ton boat moving at that speed, is enough to crack steel plating. Add 220 pounds of high explosive detonating on contact, and you get a hole in the ship. One hole might not sink a destroyer. 10 holes will. Iran tested this exact tactic in the Strait of Hormuz in April 2015 during a military exercise called the Great Prophet 9. The Iranian Navy released video footage showing over 100 drone boats swarming a mock-up of an American aircraft carrier in the middle of the strait. The exercise was public. The message was clear. The United States Navy watched the video. The Pentagon issued a statement calling the exercise provocative. And then, nothing changed. Fast forward to today. The strait is under blockade. American destroyers are on patrol. And according to intelligence assessments leaked to the Wall Street Journal, last week Iran has positioned at least 600 drone boats at coastal launch sites within striking distance of the main shipping lanes. 600 boats. If Iran launched even half of them in a coordinated swarm, the destroyers in the strait would face a threat density that no American warship has ever been designed to handle. Now, here is where this starts affecting people who have never heard of a drone boat and do not care about naval tactics. If a swarm attack disables or sinks even one American destroyer in the Strait of Hormuz, the entire blockade collapses. Not because the Navy runs out of ships, but because the insurance companies that cover commercial shipping will declare the strait a war zone. When that happens, insurance premiums for any vessel transiting the Gulf go from $50,000 per voyage to $5 million per voyage overnight. Shipping companies cannot afford that. They reroute. The oil stops moving. And oil that is not moving does not get refined, which means gasoline that does not reach gas stations, which means diesel that does not reach trucks, which means food that does not reach grocery stores. You are already seeing the leading edge of this. Gas prices in the United States hit $4.13 per gallon last week, up 38% since February. Diesel is even higher. Every truck that delivers goods to a Walmart or a Target or a Costco runs on diesel. The cost is being passed to you right now, today, in the price of everything you buy. And it gets worse. The drone boats are not the only asymmetric threat in the strait. Iran also has mines. Iran also has mini submarines. Iran also has shore-based anti-ship missiles. The drone boats are the third floor of what we call the three-threat stack. Mines on the bottom, submarines in the middle, drone boats on the surface. 3 cheap weapons, 3 different kill mechanisms, all of them designed to do the same thing. Make it impossible for American warships to operate in confined waters without taking unacceptable losses. The Pentagon calls this strategy sea denial. The idea is simple. Iran does not need to defeat the United States Navy in open battle. Iran just needs to make the cost of entering the strait higher than the value of whatever mission the Navy is trying to accomplish. And the cost is measured in dead sailors, damaged ships, and the political fallout that comes when a $2 billion destroyer gets crippled by a weapon that costs less than a semester of community college tuition. Think about that for a moment. The United States Navy has 11 aircraft carriers, 92 cruisers and destroyers, 68 submarines, and an annual budget larger than the entire GDP of most countries. And all of that firepower can be held at bay by a fleet of remote-controlled speedboats built in Iranian shipyards from commercially available parts. This is not science fiction. This is the reality of modern naval warfare in 2026. There is another angle that almost nobody is talking about. The Navy is not completely defenseless. There are weapons that could work against drone boats if they were actually deployed in the numbers needed to stop a swarm. The problem is that none of those weapons are currently on American destroyers in the quantities required. Let me give you an example. The Longbow Hellfire missile, which is an air-launched weapon normally fired from Apache helicopters, can engage small boats. Each missile costs about $150,000, which is expensive but not insane compared to the $2.4 million SM-2. The problem is that a destroyer does not carry Hellfire missiles. An Apache helicopter does, but there are no Apache helicopters on destroyers. The Navy does have the MH-60 Romeo, a helicopter that operates from destroyer flight decks. The Romeo can carry guns and rockets, but it was designed for anti-submarine warfare, not anti-surface combat. It can engage 1 or 2 boats. It cannot engage 50. Another option is directed energy weapons. Lasers. The Navy has been testing high-energy laser systems for over a decade. In theory, a laser can engage multiple small boats in rapid succession without running out of ammunition because the only thing it consumes is electrical power from the ship's generators. The problem is that the Navy's laser program has been stuck in testing for 15 years. The first operational system, the Laser Weapon System, or LAWS, was installed on the USS Ponce in 2014. It worked in demonstrations. It never entered full production. The follow-on system, HELIOS, was supposed to deploy in 2024. It is still in development. Meanwhile, Iran has been mass-producing drone boats since 2010. So, here is the question that matters at this point in the video. Is this a failure of imagination, a failure of procurement, or a deliberate choice by the Navy to prioritize big-ticket platforms over unglamorous defensive systems? Write imagination, procurement, or choice in the comments, because the people who say imagination and the people who say procurement and the people who say choice are about to have a very serious argument under this video. Now, here is where the conversation fundamentally changes. China is watching. Russia is watching. Every regional power with a coastline and a defense budget under $10 billion is watching what Iran is doing in the Strait of Hormuz and taking notes. Because if $800 drone boats can threaten $2 billion destroyers, then the entire global balance of naval power just shifted. You do not need a carrier strike group to control a choke point. You just need a few hundred speedboats and a willingness to use them. The Taiwan Strait is 110 miles wide at its narrowest point. The Strait of Malacca is 1.7 miles wide. The Bab el-Mandeb at the southern end of the Red Sea is 18 miles across. Every one of those choke points can now be held at risk by the same tactic Iran is using in Hormuz. And the United States Navy, which has spent 80 years building a fleet designed to project power across oceans, does not have a proven counter to a threat that costs less than the monthly payment on a used F-150. There is one more detail worth understanding. The drone boats are not just a tactical problem, they are a strategic message. When Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy commander, Rear Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, appeared on Iranian state television on April 8th, he said something very specific. He said, "Our unmanned surface vessels are the guardians of the Persian Gulf. The enemy's expensive warships are targets, not threats." That statement was not aimed at the United States military. It was aimed at every oil exporter in the Gulf: Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar. The message was simple. Your oil leaves through the strait. We control the strait, not with ships that the Americans can sink, with weapons the Americans cannot stop. That is not a military threat. That is a business proposal. Pay the toll, accept our terms, or risk your tankers getting caught in the crossfire the next time a swarm goes out. And it is working. According to shipping data compiled by Lloyd's List, over 400 commercial vessels are currently sitting at anchor outside the strait, waiting for insurance clarity before attempting transit. Every day they wait costs the global economy an estimated $3.2 billion in delayed shipments, spoiled cargo, and contract penalties. $3.2 billion per day. The blockade is not closing the strait, the drone boats are. So here's the final question. The United States Navy just spent 39 days destroying Iran's conventional fleet. Over 120 warships sunk, every frigate gone, every corvette on the bottom, billions of dollars in Iranian military hardware turned to scrap metal. And yet, the strait is still not open. Not because of the ships that were sunk, because of the boats that were not. $800 drone boats, built from commercial parts, operated by the Revolutionary Guard, sitting in coastal bases that the United States could destroy with a single airstrike if the order were given. The order has not been given. Subscribe for new videos.